Oh, hi there. You must be here for episode 4 of Mastering Masks in Adobe Lightroom. Let me show you something. I want to change the colour of all of the sweatshirts here. So how can one go about doing it? Well, it's not that difficult really. You just need to know the right masks. You need to know the right way to do an intersection with the right tools. And then change it. How easy was that? That is why today is called For Ultimate Control. Sorry about that, but it is. That is not clickbait, albeit I thought it was when I wrote it. It's true. That sort of edit in that sort of speed is marvellous. Now we're going to take more time over that. I'm going to roll the credits, get a cup of coffee, and I'll tell you all about it and what we are doing today. See you very shortly. All right, did you get a coffee? I've got mine sitting here. Did you get a biscuit? That's more important. Today, Intersect. So far, we have done all the basics, really. We've tried every single mask, and then we had a few editing challenges last week. This week, no editing challenges because it's new stuff, but next week we'll put some editing challenges in because I had some good feedback about those. Intersect is what we are doing. You've already seen a demonstration of it. We'll slowly step through that, but we've got a number of other pictures to be working on, and these are there. All of today's pictures are from unsplash.com because I wanted to choose a section of pictures which weren't mine. They're new to me as they are to you, and I thought we'd just work our way through those pictures. Accreditation for the photographers is in the zip file, and the zip file's on my website, and it's got all those pictures in, and the link is down below in the video notes, so you know what to do. Go and grab that and press pause if necessary, and that also gives you opportunity to get that biscuit had you not already. And then once you're all set up and you've got them into Lightroom, we can begin. If you don't know how to do that and you're just joining for the first time, jump back to episode 1. Episode 1 was all about how to set this course up, how to get the material, how to download the material, how to get it into Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw if that is your particular poison, because everything we do here in Lightroom Classic, which is my preferred application, can be done in Adobe Camera Raw, which is for all intents and purposes the same program. They're just wearing different cocktail dresses, that's all. Anyhow, we're going to be starting with this one. I'm going to disappear off the screen. Phew, I hear you cry. Thank you very much. To give us more real estate. Oh, and also this week we're looking at dual brushes A and B. We're looking at fixing masks when they can go a little bit wrong, and we're looking at starting to do some shortcuts. We've already been using shortcuts, but you've not really noticed. Every time I go to develop module, I say D for my develop module. It's a shortcut. It saves me going up here and clicking there. When I go back to gallery or grid, it's G for my grid and D for my develop module. So we'll be looking at one or two others just to introduce. Yeah, I'm going, you're getting a biscuit, and we'll crack on slowly with this one. Has he gone? Good. Let's get down to some work, shall we? All right. D for a develop module. So let's replay what we did and explain a little bit more. So essentially, the first thing I do is an assessment of the picture versus the task I want to do. And we've talked about tasks before. Sometimes there's a need to do something, remove a bit of rubbish, do a bit of color grading. Sometimes there's a desire to do something which is more creative, about changing colors, about making black and white, about aging a picture or whatever. And sometimes all you need is just a little bit of sprucing up on the overall edit, depending on your result taking the picture on the day. And this is a very vibrant picture that requires next to no editing. So the only reason I'm editing is because I've got nothing against Purple. In fact, Deep Purple are one of my favorite bands, and Purple Rain is one of my favorite singles. It's about giving us a task to do. We've got a variety of people, and I want to change their top color. Now, being aware of what the individual masks do is key. So we know what sky does, we know what landscape does on the component parts. We know that people can give us separate parts of a person. hair, facial skin, body skin, clothing, etc. And indeed landscape gives us differences. It gives us vegetation, it gives us sky, it gives us mountains, it gives us artificial ground and natural ground and things such as that. Once you become aware of what these are, you then can start to think about how to mix them together. And you don't always need this, remember. This course is about teaching you how to do these masks, how to use these masks. Would I use one on this picture? No. I'm happy with how it is, but it is a good subject to describe intersection, and so we shall continue. Now, I thought instinctively to start with people. There are lots of different ways to do this, but I thought let's start with people. Let's see it detect the people. Now, I've reset this picture since when I showed you it, so it's taken its time to find all the people in there, and it's found them. We can stop at any one, or we can go all. Whether we stop on one or all, we then get the component parts. So there's everyone's hair, there's everyone's eyebrows, there's everyone's body skin, and there's everyone's facial skin, but we want clothes. So let's create that mask. Now it's a bit too much, it's all their clothes. So we know in this particular picture, because we took time to analyze it a little bit, we can narrow that down with choosing a color or intersect with that color. So let us choose to click on the three dots and intersect mask with color range. Now I can't see where I'm clicking here because I've got my overlay on. So let's press our O key, shortcut by the way, O key for overlay, off and on. And let's choose a place to click. So I reckon that's probably the middlest of all the purples. That's a lighter purple, that's a deeper purple. So we'll choose that one. And that's fairly good. I can see a few obvious bits. It's spilled into the jeans and such. One second, I just switched it on permanently. It's spilled into the jeans, but I promise you, you won't see that. I talked earlier about slapdash editing. You don't have to be massively precise. No one's going to notice a slight color change against black. In fact, in a future edit we've got coming up, you'll see what happens against white. But no one's going to really notice that. But we can, if we want, tidy it up. In which case, let's take a subtraction, take a brush, and just brush out some of these little bits. I'm going to leave that knee to see if you actually notice it. And what else is more important than that is where it's missed. And unfortunately it has missed his arm and a little bit around his head. So let us add with a brush. Now I'm conscious I didn't do these little refinements on the example I showed earlier. That was largely to whet your appetite and show how you can get 95% of the way there just with 2 masks and 20 seconds worth of work. But we've got a brush here. We'll make it a little bit smaller and we'll just bring that arm in and we'll make it smaller again, and we'll just bring it around the top of that hoodie and a little bit on the inside. Anywhere else we've missed? Shout out now or forever hold it. No, I can't hear you shouting, so I'm going to say that is it. Now we've got a selection and we took our time, we explained it, but even so, that is far quicker than would have been the case with just a brush or anything else. And we don't have to go to Photoshop to do it. It's all here in Lightroom. So let's change the color. Let's go towards a claret. And I don't know about you, but this does blow me away. That's just marvelous. Can you tell on that knee? Not particularly. Now I've pointed it out and you know to target it, you might say yes. Let's subtract from that knee with a brush. Yeah, perhaps there was a little bit there, but you know what, there's still some there even though I subtracted it, so there's a bit of that coming through anyway. And the other thing I chose is where I actually changed the actual slider to. If I'd come to another colour which wasn't as complementary to the purple, let's say this teal, you can see more of the other bits are coming through. And that's not because the mask was insufficient. It's just down to how some colours play on top of others. But if that's where you wanted to go, then it's just a case of grabbing that brush again, possibly make it a little bit bigger, and just coming in and fixing those bits. But again, this is just quite gentle, just easy peasy editing. There's nothing onerous here at all, and it's dead simple. All right, have a go at that, and we'll move on to the next picture. And I included this picture for a particular reason, to show where masks can go wrong or need a little polish, and Adobe tells you so. So let's just do a little general edit on this. If I was using this picture, there's two things I'd probably want to do. It was more than two things, but there are two things I want to do. Is this is a bit anemic looking, this avocado. I do like avocado, so I want to fix that. So I probably just jump straight into, I don't know, object selection with that. And we can come around like so. We don't necessarily have to be that precise for Adobe to do a good selection. And I think I would just darken this really. And then add a little bit more clarity in, because I think that looks far more appetizing. As for the tomatoes, well, what we could do here, we'll do a quick intersect, shall we? What we'll do is we'll do create a mask based on the color range. We'll choose the tomato as the color range. We'll play with the refinement. I think about there, but obviously we don't want these other bits. So let's intersect it. Hold down our Option key on a Mac or Alt key on a PC. The button changes. And intersect with a brush. So now this will only apply where I brush. Now my brush is a bit big, so I'm going to bring it down and bring the feather down a little bit. And if I now just brush, I know that I'm grabbing just the red of that tomato, not the reds or slightly other bits and pieces that were in the whatever that is, sweet potato. And now that I've got that selection, I can then add clarity into the tomatoes as well. Gives them a bit more vibrance, a bit more richness, far more appetizing. I'm now going to show you something which you won't unsee, at least I can't. That black bit of pepper. My eye, as soon as I saw it, was drawn to it, and I look at this picture and I'm drawn back to it. Now, that's probably because I've just told you about it, but I saw it initially and I thought it's a distraction. I want to get rid of it. That is not a problem. We can simply just come up here where we've got our clone, heal and remove tools. Let's click on the remove tool. Our brush is probably the right size. There you are. Put the target on it, click, and away it goes. I'm happy. But Adobe isn't. This icon has gone amber. So what's happened there? Let's click on it. It's telling us that we need to repair something. Now, I'll say you and I, but I can't really vouch for you, but you and I probably can't see there's an issue there on the screen. But in other circumstances, we may have. This warning is there regardless. And what the warning is we have made a mask based on something like a color or whatever, and it's adapted accordingly. And then we've used a tool which has changed some of the pixels. So if you remove something, it has to replace it with something, other pixels. If you clone something, it moves things around, pixels from other places. The point being, you are changing pixels within the area you've already applied a mask. So Adobe thinks, hang on, this mask might not be right. What if we changed it to something that was red and had used a color to look at that avocado as being green? Then the red bit would no longer match the mask which we placed on the photo based on it being green, if that makes sense. Either way, whether it's minimum or minor, you get this little warning. It used to be a red dot and nobody knew what the red dot meant. But now it's a warning with an explanation. So all you do is click update, and that's where masks might go wrong or slightly break, and you might not even notice anyway. Sometimes you will and you think what's going on, but that's what that indicator is for. While we're on this picture, what else would I do to finish it off? I would probably put a radial gradient on this. Radial gradient in there, invert it, and bring the exposure down just to make the plate stand out a little bit more. I was talking about shortcuts earlier. This is a great one to introduce shortcuts. The radial gradient is Shift plus M. God knows why it is Shift plus M. I'll delete that mask. It just is. M is a linear gradient, which we'll see in a minute, and Shift plus M, so Shift M, loads up a radial gradient for me ready to go. I'll undo that. I don't even have to be on masks. I could be in the middle of this doing a generic edit on this plate and I go, oh, hang on, I want to put a radial gradient on, Shift plus M. It loads up masks, it loads up a new radial gradient, and you're ready to go. It's quicker, but better than that, it's more convenient. Invert it and bring that down. M, let's go back to doing something else, editing here or whatever. M is a linear gradient, so just M, it goes to masks, it loads up the linear gradient, and then we can bring a linear gradient down on the screen. I don't need a linear gradient, I was just calling that out. Okay, let's move on back into the world of Intersect, or are we? Now I want to change the colour of her trousers. So, well, we know there's a people mask and we know there's clothing. So let's detect people. Takes a little while. Might not for you. It's certainly deciding to for me. Click the person and click the clothes. I predict in future there'll be refinements to this where you can pick what clothes. Create mask. But did you spot the error? It thinks the midriff of this girl is clothing. Notwithstanding that, we want, and also the boots are, well, they are classed as part of the clothing, but we just want the trousers. So we could do an intersect with a brush and simply just brush in here like so. I'm just doing this rough and ready. You get the gist. And it doesn't matter if I brush out here, because it's only intersecting with clothing, and clothing isn't out here, clothing isn't on her face, so I can actually be a bit more slapdash like this. I do have to be careful at the shoes, because we know the shoes are part of the clothing, and I do have to be more careful around her midriff because we know that they picked that out. So I've made the size of my brush smaller, and what I'm going to do now is hold down my Option key on a Mac or Alt key on a PC. And if you notice, the brush hair in the middle goes from a crosshair to a minus sign. So where I spilled over the edges now, I can just wipe that away. And now we've got our trousers, which we shall colour. Okay, so that was one way of doing it. But our initial selection was give us a little bit more work to do. So I wonder if there's a better, quicker way. I'll just switch that off. And yes, I think is probably the answer. I'm just going to go select object. And with my little squiggle thing, I'm just going to draw up and down and around. Quite easy, quite slowly. It's got her shoes again, but look at how brilliant it has now done the outline of the trousers, and in particular the waistband. So that might be a better way to start, and then from there change the colour. Now I didn't bother removing the shoes, and I didn't bother removing the shoes for a reason, because generally colour change like this doesn't apply to white, only if it's got a little bit of shadow in it. As you can see on the rear heel of her right leg, there's a bit of shadow there. But because I knew that white is difficult to colour and won't colour necessarily, I could just dive straight in. So object selection was a better choice here than any intersection. So although we're getting more complicated, although we're getting more detailed and getting more precise and such with our masks, don't forget, keep it simple is the way to go. So have a go on this one using both an intersect solution and an object solution. or indeed even a brush. So if I go for my brush tool, instead of coming up here and doing one, I'll press K, which is my shortcut for a brush tool, and there's my brush tool loaded. With my auto mask on, so it should stay within the lines. Notice how the circle of my brush is wider than the edge of her trousers, but it is staying on the edge of her trousers. That is what the auto mask is giving us. So I can afford to be a little bit more slapdash coming down the inside. And of course I've got to colour it in as well. So that could be another approach. All right, let's move on to our next picture. And what I think I would like to do here is firstly emphasize the lines coming down the middle of the screen. So let us zoom in a little bit. And well, I think the obvious selection might be to use a color range. Ignore the sides. We don't need to let that sort of thing bother us these days. And we'll just alter the refinement until we get the lines more isolated. And then we'll intersect. So let's click on there and choose intersect with a brush. Now where's my brush? Sorry, my brush shape didn't appear on screen, so I had to just go and click on it there. And it's small enough there by that car that I will not touch the outside of the road at all. And then make my brush a bit bigger and just do this. And look at this, I can just brush over here, it doesn't matter. It'll only do where it intersects. Obviously I don't want to brush over here because that also was part of it, Control Z. But yeah, that's a superb selection. And I'm not saying that in a boastful way, I'm saying that as a well done Adobe way. And what do I want to do with that? I might want to brighten it, add clarity, and tint it a bit more. There you go, that'll do. It doesn't really matter. What was important there was demonstrating the fact of another intersection. Our next picture, I really like this picture actually. I think if I was editing it, I'd probably just add a little bit of a vignette and then possibly a radial gradient. So let's Shift M and draw the thing in and subtract from that the subject. And when it's decided on that, I just brighten it ever so slightly. That's what I would do with that picture. I really like it. Oh, I might crop it just a little bit as well. Sorry, yes. It's about there. Okay. But that is by the by. Let's do an intersect here. I think I want to bring the foliage down to match the darker oranges in her coat, just to blend it in just a little bit more. How could we do that? Well, we know that landscape has got vegetation. Let's create that mask. And while I'm on that, switch it off so I can see the colors, because I now want to intersect with a color. So Option on a Mac, Alt on a PC, click on intersect, click on color range, and click there. Okay, so now I have got that set. I'm going to bring the color of this down. So let's just lower it like that. Increase the saturation a little bit. And I think that's now a better match to the oranges that are in her outfit. We could do it the other way around. Let's say we wanted to brighten her coat thing. So let's try that again. So let's go person, clothes, intersects. We'll use this method, intersect with a color. Switch my overlay off so I can see what color I'm going to pick. And I want to pick the, for some reason it's not showing my dropper, but hopefully it'll still work when I click on that. It has. Show the overlay. And now let's play with that range. There you are. I've got the darker oranges as after. Didn't particularly want her trousers, but we'll go on, we'll subtract with a brush just very quickly, make it a bit bigger. But even so, a little bit more work, but even so, that is very, very quick work to identify the swatches of colour on a multi-shaped swatchy top thing. Coat, that's the word I'm looking for. Fashion guru that I am, and I'll now increase the exposure on that and saturation. So we've approached this from a different way. We've lifted the jacket up to match the leaves, and we've also done it the other way. But in seconds, I mean, that was what, a minute, if that, to go through two different ways to put a bit of colour matchy gradient in for difficult subjects. Selecting foliage would have been awful to do, let alone select foliage of a particular colour without Intersect. And with 2 to go, you're probably getting the hang of this by now. So let's do something again. I'm trying to pick something that would be difficult to actually select without Intersect. And I think if we want to change the door frames and window frames on this building, might be something difficult to do. So let's try and make it very easy, shall we? So let us select a starting point. Could just be the white. There's a common thing there, so we could go for color range and click on the white, and let's refine this so that I'm getting rid of quite a lot of it, except all of those door and window frames are now selected. And I think I will just intersect that option or Alt key with a brush and make my brush a bit smaller. Now sometimes I've actually switched the overlay off and sometimes I haven't. This one I'm not so bothered about. Where it was a colour that I had to identify, I switched it off, but I'm now just going to brush in here, put my flow back up, bring my feather a bit smaller. Then again, don't have to be precise. Look, I'm just wriggling up and down as long as I'm staying away from other bits of white. And if I was to stray into them, well, I could just Control Z that bit out and just pick up where I left off. But how long would this have taken us to uniquely identify doors and window frames that are white? As well finish this off. Should play some music in the background while I'm doing this. Okay, how long would that take otherwise? And now we can do what we want with it. What do we want to do? Do you want to tint them a little bit more to blend them in or make them a bit more cool? Let's tint them a little bit and let's actually lower the exposure on them. It doesn't really matter what I'm doing here. It's the principle of the fact that things which were once very impossible to select are now within your grasp. Understanding what the individual masks have to offer and then thinking what combination. But don't forget the girl with the tracksuit on. Sometimes keeping it simple is the answer and you don't need Intersect. Let's go to our last picture. I know I said I would do brushes A and B, but I think I'll save that till next time and we'll just finish off with this particular picture. In fact, no, I will set a challenge on this one and we'll pick it up on the next video. So what should we do with this? Well, I think I would like to make something more here to attract the eye, get some definition back in up here and add a bit more shadows and such down there. So something like that. That's a bit of a challenge for you. I'll walk through this edit on the next episode. And with that, I'm going to do my usual spiel about asking you to give this a thumbs up if you think you got anything from this. Please click on the subscribe button to be notified of future events. You have to ring the bell as well. And that's it. I'm well out of coffee. I need more coffee. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.